Have you ever noticed something strange happening when you start improving your life? You begin working on yourself, becoming more aware, more focused, and more intentional about how you live. You expect that the people around you will support your growth. After all, personal growth is supposed to be something positive. It is supposed to inspire others, encourage them, and bring people closer together. But sometimes the opposite happens. Instead of encouragement, you start noticing subtle changes in the way certain people respond to you. Some conversations begin to feel different. Some individuals who once seemed comfortable around you now appear distant or uneasy. Others may react with criticism, skepticism, or unexpected negativity. It can feel confusing because you are simply trying to improve your life, yet the reactions around you suggest that something about your change is making others uncomfortable. Many people who begin a journey of personal growth experience this moment. At first, it may be difficult to understand why it happens. You may ask yourself whether you did something wrong. You might wonder if you are somehow creating distance between yourself and others without realizing it. But in many cases, the situation is more complex than it appears. When someone begins becoming more self-aware, more disciplined, or more intentional about the direction of their life, that change can create a powerful reflection. Without meaning to, your transformation can begin to highlight things in other people's lives that they have not yet faced themselves. Your progress can remind them of their own doubts, fears, or unfulfilled goals. This does not mean those people are bad or malicious. Often they may not even realize why they are reacting the way they are. What they are feeling is simply a natural human response to change, especially when that change challenges the comfort of familiar patterns. If you have recently started thinking more deeply about your life, focusing on growth, or developing a stronger sense of purpose, you may have already noticed some of these reactions. Perhaps some people have become defensive when you talk about your goals. Maybe others seem skeptical about your progress, even when you are clearly moving in a positive direction. In some cases, you might even sense quiet resistance from individuals who once felt supportive. Experiences like these can make the journey of personal transformation feel confusing or even isolating. You may start questioning whether your growth is creating problems instead of solutions. But the truth is that what you are experiencing may not be a sign that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes when a person begins to grow, their light becomes more visible. And when that happens, it can unintentionally expose the shadows that others are still struggling to understand within themselves. In other words, the reactions you are seeing may not be about you at all. In this video, we are going to explore 3 important reasons why this phenomenon happens. We will look at why people who are on a path of awakening or personal growth often experience resistance from others, and why your progress can sometimes trigger emotions that have nothing to do with your intentions. Once you understand these dynamics, you may begin to see these situations from a completely different perspective. Instead of feeling discouraged by the reactions of others, you may begin to understand what is really happening beneath the surface. Before we continue, take a moment to support the channel. If this message resonates with you, make sure to like this video so more people can discover it. Share it with someone who may be experiencing the same journey, and subscribe to the channel for more content about awakening, personal transformation, and the path of the chosen ones. One of the first and most important reasons your light can trigger discomfort in others is that personal growth often acts like a mirror. When you begin changing the way you think, the way you live, and the way you approach life, the transformation does not happen in isolation. The people around you inevitably notice it, and sometimes, without you intending it, your growth begins reflecting things that others have been avoiding within themselves. Most people move through life following familiar patterns. These patterns are built from habits, expectations, and routines that feel comfortable and predictable. Over time, those patterns become part of a person's identity. They create a sense of stability, even if they do not always lead to growth or fulfillment. Because of this, many individuals avoid questioning those patterns too deeply, not necessarily because they are unwilling to grow, but because confronting the possibility of change can feel uncomfortable. Growth requires effort, self-reflection, and sometimes the courage to admit that certain aspects of life are not working as well as they could. When someone in their environment begins evolving, that comfort can quietly begin to shift. If you start becoming more self-aware, more disciplined, or more intentional about how you live, people around you may notice that difference. They may observe the way you speak, the way you handle challenges, or the way you approach your goals. Even if you never directly encourage them to change, your actions alone can create a comparison that they did not ask for. And that comparison can be difficult. For example, imagine someone who has always talked about wanting to improve their life, but has never taken the first step. They may have dreams, ambitions, or ideas they have postponed for years. Perhaps they want to change their habits, pursue a meaningful goal, or invest more effort in personal growth, but fear or uncertainty has held them back. Then they see someone close to them beginning that journey. Suddenly, the possibility of change becomes real. They see someone taking steps they have been hesitant to take themselves. And while part of them may feel inspired by that example, another part may feel confronted by it. Your growth becomes a reminder of the choices they have not yet made. This does not mean they resent you personally. In many cases, the discomfort they feel has very little to do with you at all. Instead, it comes from the internal conflict created when they realize that the life they have been postponing is actually possible. When people are faced with that realization, they tend to respond in different ways. Some individuals feel inspired. They see your progress and think, if that person can grow, maybe I can grow as well. These people often become supportive and curious. They ask questions, they learn from your example, and they use your journey as motivation for their own development. But others respond differently. Instead of feeling motivated, they may feel exposed. The difference between where they are and where they want to be becomes more visible. Rather than confronting that gap, they may try to reduce the discomfort by questioning your change instead. Sometimes this appears as subtle criticism. Someone may suggest that you are overthinking things, taking your growth too seriously, or changing in ways that make them uncomfortable. Other times it appears as jokes, dismissive comments, or attempts to downplay your progress. In more extreme cases, people may even begin questioning your motivations. They might suggest that you are trying to appear superior, or that your personal development is somehow unrealistic or unnecessary. These reactions can feel confusing because your intention was never to challenge anyone. You were simply trying to improve your own life. But the reality is that growth changes the dynamics within relationships. When people grow together, the process can feel natural and supportive. But when one person begins evolving in ways that others have not yet chosen, it can disrupt the balance that once existed. The discomfort comes from the contrast. Your willingness to pursue meaningful goals can highlight the absence of those goals in someone else's life. Your discipline can reveal habits that someone else wishes they had changed long ago. Your emotional awareness can bring attention to conflicts or insecurities that others prefer not to examine. Again, this does not mean your growth is the problem. In fact, it often reveals something important about human psychology. People tend to protect their sense of identity very strongly. When something threatens the image they have built about themselves, they often react defensively, even if that threat is only perceived. If someone believes they are already doing their best, seeing another person dramatically improve their life can create internal pressure. That pressure forces them to ask difficult questions about their own choices. And not everyone is ready for that conversation with themselves. This is why your growth can sometimes trigger reactions that seem disproportionate to what you are actually doing. You may simply be focusing on self-improvement, learning new perspectives, or becoming more intentional about your actions. But to someone who feels stuck, that same behavior can feel like a challenge to their identity. It is important to understand that this dynamic does not mean you should hide your growth or limit your development to protect others from discomfort. Growth is a natural part of being human. Every individual has the capacity to evolve, learn, and improve their life. The path toward that growth may look different for each person, but the possibility exists for everyone. When your development reflects something that others have not yet faced, it may create temporary tension. However, that tension is often part of a deeper process. In some cases, your example eventually inspires the people around you. The discomfort they initially feel may slowly turn into curiosity. Over time, they may begin asking themselves the same questions you once asked. In other cases, some individuals may continue resisting change for a long time. Their reaction is not something you can control. What you can control is how you respond to that situation. Instead of becoming defensive or frustrated, it helps to recognize what is truly happening. Your growth is acting as a mirror, revealing possibilities that others may not yet be ready to confront. Understanding this can help you approach these interactions with patience rather than resentment. It also reminds you that your journey is not meant to force change in others. Personal transformation is always a personal decision. Each individual must reach the point where they are ready to take that step for themselves. Your role is simply to continue evolving in a way that feels authentic and meaningful to you. Over time, your actions may inspire some people to reflect on their own lives. Others may choose different paths entirely. Both outcomes are part of the natural diversity of human experience. What matters most is that you remain grounded in your own growth, without allowing the reactions of others to derail your progress. Because the truth is that your light does not create darkness in others. It simply reveals what was already there, waiting to be faced. Another reason your light can trigger discomfort in others is connected to authenticity. When someone begins living more honestly and intentionally, their choices can quietly challenge the social expectations that many people rely on to feel secure. Most social environments operate on shared patterns. These patterns are not always written rules, but they are understood by the people within the group. They define what is considered normal, what is considered acceptable, and what kind of behavior helps someone fit in. Over time, these expectations shape how people think, how they speak, and how they make decisions. For many individuals, following these patterns provides a sense of stability. It removes uncertainty because the path is already defined. When everyone around them behaves in similar ways, the environment feels predictable and safe. But authenticity often disrupts that predictability. When you begin living in alignment with your deeper values, rather than simply following the expectations around you, your behavior may start to look different from the patterns others are used to seeing. You may start questioning assumptions that once seemed obvious. You may choose paths that others never considered, and sometimes, simply by being honest about what you believe or what you want from life, you introduce uncertainty into a system that depends on sameness. This is where the tension can begin. Imagine a group of people who have always followed the same routine. They share the same conversations, the same priorities, and the same assumptions about how life should be lived. Within that environment, stability exists because no one is challenging the structure. Now imagine one person within that group beginning to change. That person starts asking deeper questions about their direction. They begin prioritizing growth, purpose, and self-awareness over comfort and familiarity. They may stop participating in habits that once defined the group's identity. They may begin speaking openly about ideas that challenge long-standing beliefs. Even if those changes are made peacefully and respectfully, they can still create discomfort for the people around them. The discomfort is not always about disagreement. In many cases, the people observing this change are not consciously opposed to it. Instead, the change creates a moment of reflection that they did not expect. When someone lives authentically, they demonstrate that it is possible to step outside the boundaries of social expectation. They show that a person can question assumptions, make different choices, and pursue a life that aligns with their own values, rather than simply repeating what everyone else is doing. For individuals who have built their identity around following those expectations, this realization can feel unsettling. It raises questions they may not have asked before. If that person can choose a different path, why haven't I done the same? If those beliefs can be questioned, what does that mean about the choices I've already made? If authenticity is possible, what would it require from me to live that way? These questions are powerful because they challenge the structure that people use to understand their place in the world. Many social systems depend on unspoken agreement. People agree to follow similar paths, adopt similar definitions of success, and maintain similar ways of thinking. This shared agreement makes the environment feel stable. Authenticity interrupts that agreement. When one person begins acting according to their own internal values, rather than external expectations, it changes the balance within the group. It introduces the idea that the system itself might not be the only option. And when that idea appears, people respond in different ways. Some individuals become curious. They may begin asking questions about your perspective. They might want to understand what motivated your change, and what you have learned along the way. For these people, authenticity becomes a source of inspiration, but others respond with resistance. Instead of exploring the new possibility, they may attempt to restore the old sense of stability. This can appear in subtle ways. Someone might suggest that you are complicating things unnecessarily. They might imply that questioning the norm is impractical or unrealistic. In some cases, they may even frame your authenticity as a form of rebellion or selfishness. These reactions are rarely about the specific choices you are making. More often, they are about the effect those choices have on the environment. When someone chooses authenticity, they remove the illusion that everyone must follow the same path. That realization can feel liberating for some people, but unsettling for others. It challenges the idea that the current system is the only way to live. This is particularly true in environments where conformity has been deeply normalized. In such settings, people often feel pressure to maintain harmony by avoiding questions that might disrupt the group dynamic. When authenticity enters that space, it can feel like a disturbance, even if it is expressed calmly and respectfully. It is important to understand that this reaction does not necessarily mean people reject authenticity itself. Often they simply fear the uncertainty that comes with change. Authenticity invites exploration, and exploration requires leaving familiar territory. For someone who feels secure within the existing structure, that invitation can feel risky. This is why living authentically sometimes leads to misunderstanding. People may interpret your choices through the lens of their own fears or assumptions. They may believe you are rejecting them personally, when in reality, you are simply choosing to follow your own values. Understanding this dynamic can help you respond with greater awareness. Instead of interpreting resistance as hostility, you can recognize that your authenticity is interacting with systems of expectation that people have relied on for years. Your willingness to question those systems naturally creates tension, but tension does not always mean conflict. Sometimes it is simply the process of growth unfolding. When one person chooses authenticity, it gradually expands the possibilities available to everyone else. It shows that life can be approached with curiosity rather than blind acceptance. It demonstrates that individuals have the freedom to define their own direction. Even if people initially resist that idea, it often plants a seed of reflection. Over time, some individuals may begin reconsidering the expectations they once accepted without question. They may start exploring their own values, priorities, and goals. Your authenticity may become the example that allows them to imagine a different path for themselves. Of course, not everyone will respond this way. Some people may prefer to maintain the structures they are comfortable with, and that is their choice. The important thing is that authenticity is not meant to force change on others. It is simply the act of living honestly, according to your own understanding of what matters. When you choose authenticity, you are not rejecting society or relationships. You are choosing to participate in them from a place of self-awareness, rather than unconscious conformity. This approach can sometimes challenge the expectations around you, but it also creates a more genuine connection with the people who are open to growth. And for those who are not ready to question the systems they rely on, your authenticity may still serve a purpose. It reminds them that another way of living exists. That reminder alone can be powerful. Because authenticity does not demand that others change. It simply demonstrates that change is possible. The third reason your light can trigger reactions in others has less to do with logic or social expectations and more to do with emotion. Human beings carry complex emotional worlds beneath the surface. Many of these emotions remain hidden for long periods of time because people do not always feel safe or ready to confront them directly. When someone begins developing greater confidence, calmness, and self-awareness, that presence can sometimes bring those hidden emotions into the open. Personal growth changes the emotional energy a person carries. When someone becomes more self-aware, they tend to move through life with a different kind of stability. Their reactions become calmer. Their decisions become more intentional. Their sense of identity becomes less dependent on external approval. This shift may seem simple from the outside, but emotionally it can have a strong effect on the people around them. Confidence, for example, can be powerful in ways people do not always expect. When someone becomes secure in who they are, they stop seeking constant validation. They begin making decisions based on their values rather than on the opinions of others. They communicate more directly and carry themselves with a quiet sense of certainty. For individuals who feel confident in themselves, this kind of presence can feel inspiring and reassuring. It shows them that self-trust is possible. It reminds them that personal strength does not require aggression or superiority. But for individuals who are still struggling with insecurity, encountering that same confidence can feel very different. Instead of feeling inspired, they may feel a sudden awareness of their own doubts. Seeing someone who appears calm and grounded can unintentionally highlight the internal uncertainty they have been trying to ignore. The same thing can happen with emotional awareness. When someone begins understanding their own emotions more clearly, they usually become less reactive. They stop responding to every situation with frustration or defensiveness. They become capable of observing their feelings without being controlled by them. To someone who has spent years reacting automatically to stress or conflict, this kind of emotional balance can be unfamiliar. It may even feel uncomfortable. It can bring attention to patterns that were previously invisible. For example, imagine two people having a disagreement. In the past, both individuals might have reacted with anger, criticism, or emotional escalation. But if one person has developed greater self-awareness, they may approach the conversation with patience and clarity instead. They may listen more carefully. They may respond calmly instead of defensively. While this behavior may seem constructive, it can sometimes create emotional tension for the other person. The calm response removes the familiar dynamic of conflict. Without that familiar pattern, the other person may suddenly feel exposed. Instead of focusing on the disagreement itself, they become aware of their own emotional reaction. This moment of awareness can bring hidden feelings to the surface. Jealousy is one of the emotions that sometimes appears in these situations. When someone witnesses another person growing, becoming confident, and pursuing meaningful goals, they may begin comparing their own progress to what they are seeing. Comparison can be difficult because it highlights differences that people may not feel ready to face. If someone secretly wishes they had pursued their own growth earlier, seeing another person succeed can trigger feelings of regret or inadequacy. These emotions do not necessarily mean the person wishes harm on anyone else. Often they simply reflect a painful awareness of missed opportunities or personal uncertainty. Insecurity can appear in a similar way. When people feel unsure about their own value or direction in life, they often rely on external environments to maintain their sense of stability. If everyone around them behaves in similar ways, it becomes easier to believe that their choices are normal and acceptable. But when someone begins changing, improving, or pursuing deeper purpose, it disrupts that stability. The contrast between two different paths becomes visible. This contrast can make someone question their own sense of progress. Instead of confronting that uncertainty directly, they may react by criticizing or dismissing the person who triggered the feeling. By minimizing someone else's growth, they temporarily reduce the pressure of their own insecurity. Fear of being left behind is another emotional response that sometimes emerges. Human relationships are deeply connected to familiarity. People feel comfortable when the individuals around them remain predictable. When someone begins changing rapidly, others may worry that the relationship itself will change as well. They may fear that the growing person will eventually move on, develop new interests, or become less connected to the old dynamic. This fear can lead to subtle resistance. Someone might discourage your growth, not because they want you to fail, but because they fear losing the connection they once relied on. They may hope that if you remain the same, the relationship will stay safe and predictable. In some cases, people may even feel a quiet sense of inadequacy. Watching someone pursue growth can bring attention to areas where they feel unprepared or overwhelmed. They may believe that they are not capable of achieving the same progress. Instead of seeing your development as inspiration, they interpret it as evidence that they are falling behind. These emotional responses are deeply human. Everyone carries insecurities, doubts, and fears at different stages of life. Personal growth does not eliminate these emotions instantly. Instead, it gradually helps people face them with greater understanding. The important thing to recognize is that these reactions are not created by you. Your light does not generate jealousy, insecurity, or fear in others. Those emotions already exist within them. What your growth does is bring them closer to the surface. In that sense, your presence acts like a mirror once again. But this time, the reflection is emotional rather than practical or social. When people react strongly to your growth, they are often responding to the feelings your progress has awakened inside them. Understanding this can help you approach these situations with greater compassion.
It is easy to become defensive when someone responds negatively to your progress. You may feel misunderstood or unfairly judged. But recognizing the emotional dynamics involved can change how you interpret those reactions. Instead of seeing hostility, you may begin seeing struggle. Instead of seeing rejection, you may see someone confronting emotions they have not yet learned how to process. This perspective does not mean you must accept harmful behavior or tolerate disrespect. Healthy boundaries remain important in every relationship. However, understanding the emotional source of these reactions can prevent you from internalizing them. You do not need to carry responsibility for emotions that belong to someone else. Each person is ultimately responsible for confronting their own fears, insecurities, and doubts. Growth cannot be forced from the outside. It must come from an internal decision to reflect and change. Your journey may inspire some people to begin that process. Others may resist it for a long time. Either outcome is part of the natural complexity of human relationships. What matters most is remembering that other people's reactions often reveal their inner state more than they reveal anything about your worth or intentions. Your growth does not diminish anyone else. It simply illuminates possibilities that may feel uncomfortable for those who are not yet ready to explore them. And when you understand that, you can continue walking your path with clarity rather than confusion. Because the emotions your light reveals in others are reflections of their own internal landscape, not a measure of who you are or what you deserve. As we reach the end of this conversation, it is important to return to the central message behind everything we have discussed. Personal growth is not always received in the way we expect. When someone begins developing greater awareness, confidence, and authenticity, the natural assumption is that the people around them will celebrate that progress. Yet many individuals who walk the path of self-discovery eventually notice that their transformation sometimes attracts criticism, misunderstanding, or unexpected negativity. Experiences like this can be confusing, especially when your intentions are simply to become a better version of yourself. You may begin questioning whether your growth is creating distance between you and others, or whether you have somehow changed in a way that is difficult for people to accept. But as we have explored throughout this video, these reactions do not necessarily mean you are doing something wrong. In many situations, the discomfort others show has less to do with your actions and more to do with what your growth reveals. When you begin evolving, your presence can highlight possibilities that others may not yet be ready to face. Your discipline can remind someone of habits they have been postponing. Your authenticity can challenge expectations they have relied on for years. Your confidence can bring hidden insecurities closer to the surface. In this sense, your light does not create darkness in others. It simply reveals what may already exist within them. Understanding this dynamic can help you move forward with greater clarity and emotional balance. Instead of interpreting every negative reaction as a personal attack, you can recognize that growth often changes the way people perceive you. Some individuals will feel inspired by your transformation. Others may need time to process what it means for their own lives. Both reactions are part of the human experience. What matters most is that you remain grounded in your own journey. Personal development is not about proving anything to anyone else. It is about becoming more aware of who you are, what you value, and what direction you want your life to move toward. There will always be moments when the path feels challenging. Growth can require stepping outside familiar roles, questioning assumptions, and leaving behind environments that once felt comfortable. Along the way, some relationships may shift or evolve as people respond differently to the changes they observe in you. But these challenges do not invalidate the progress you are making. In fact, they often confirm that transformation is truly taking place. Remaining committed to your awareness, your authenticity, and your personal development allows you to continue moving forward without losing yourself in the reactions of others. The opinions, doubts, or misunderstandings that appear along the way do not define your path.
Your light was never meant to please everyone.
Its purpose is to illuminate your own direction, helping you move toward a life that feels meaningful, honest, and aligned with who you truly are. When you focus on that purpose, the reactions around you become easier to understand without allowing them to control your decisions. Over time, the same growth that once triggered discomfort may eventually inspire reflection in the people around you. Some may begin their own journeys of self-discovery after seeing what is possible. Others may choose different paths entirely. Either way, your responsibility remains the same. Continue growing, continue learning, continue becoming the most authentic version of yourself. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to support the channel. Like this video so more people can discover it, share it with someone who may also be going through a similar journey, and subscribe to the channel for more content about awakening, personal transformation, and the path of the chosen ones.